nobody else sitting it like that. Before that, I'm tryna baby.
Alright guys, before we jump right into the next episode of my podcast, Samuel Self-Relevance, we will talk about standards. And the idea behind standards is that each of us sets personal boundaries and personal limits, what we ask from ourselves. Personal standards. But before that, I have a story that exemplifies a story from my childhood that exemplifies the idea of how we think for ourselves. But before that, all of us ask ourselves, and we have many questions about looks, how much looks matter. That is very common question. And I want to say a couple points about that. So yeah, before we get into the deep sense of standards, looks are on the surface. Looks make the first impression, you say. And in the world where everything moves forward pretty fast, the first impression should be on point. And I have found a research where, in a research it was found that both men and women in a dating scene both appreciated, before the date and after the date, both appreciated attractiveness of the other one equally high. And it makes sense because you will spend a lot of time with your future children and they will look like you do and your partner. And that brings us to the story. When I was on the 9th grade at school, I truly had the belief and feeling that I am a kind of a bad student. But when we got our certificates by the end of the year, and I look at my grades were one of the best. But I still had genuinely the feeling that this is not good. I genuinely had the feeling, even at looking at the grades at the same time. And there you see that it's all about how and what kind of standards we set for ourselves. I genuinely felt that I'm not the kind of good student, even though my classmates said to me that Hikke, or that yeah, you are a good student, but I didn't hear that. It had no impact in the way how I thought about myself. And I always had to feel that I'm not good enough student. I'm not good enough as a person, and I'm not, and I could be better. It was like I could be better at many things, such as being fit and so forth. I always had the feeling. And now you see that it's how we define the standard for ourselves. It's all about that. And from there, we are able to motivate and set goals for ourselves and inspire ourselves forwards. And right, how you can then set those examples for yourself where you want to go. And that's why it's so important to have the kind of exemplar persons up to which you can look up to. And I don't kind of remember if I had any such models at primary school, but we can also ask why I had that feeling, about myself, and it just comes down, I think, to the environment. Our class was the best class, and the friends I had, they were good persons. They were really good. And that way, you kind of set yourself up to a certain degree, up to a certain bar and level. And from there you go forwards with your own life. And in the same sense, what you set it for yourself, you should make sure that your own actions and boundaries and the consequences and implications of what you do are the moving factor forwards, and not to rely on anything external, such as looks. The question that how I look at myself, where if I would look at myself from outside, where I see myself, that's completely irrelevant question. I never think in between those lines, because I don't rely on those external factors to count on. Even we previously talked about that they do matter, but I'm already like many steps ahead and thinking how we and I can make myself by actions to make it work by the actions we take. And there you go. Now we will take another leap forwards into the world of personal standards. Just came to mind about those childhood models which are part of each one's culture. So each one has a personal culture around them. And then there is national culture, for example. And one funny thing that came to mind is, for example, the differences between Nordic countries and cultures. So the first thoughts that came to mind, for example, about Finnish culture is that I feel like our culture is very practical, whereas Russian culture is more romantic. And I think the difference is that Russian has great cultural poets, for example, Pushkin and so forth. great writers. And in that sense, in Russian culture, the romantic vibe, if I would say in modern terms, it is more like normal part of daily practicality. Whereas in Finland, we are more like practical in our work and daily life, but the kind of romance is just not there. Instead, we have more like humor. There's a certain degree of Finnish humor in that place. And that's just funny how a person can live in a country, but if you get to know many other cultures, then you are able to form them as a part of yourself, and so forth. Other common questions people usually wonder is what is most valuable in a being, and what is most precious in life. An answer of mine is that being underestimated. Because when people underestimate you, you will see who they are for real. You see what people are for real only when they underestimate you. And that is most valuable and precious thing in life. Seeing what a person is for real. Because again, people change so slowly. You can only think to yourself that you can change fast, but you have all the years, all the time you have lived as a part of you. And those years are not going to disappear just like that. It will take progress, transition, gradual effort to change the most innate and inner being who you are. And thereby, I want to soothe everyone here that it takes only one day. One day that something so significant happens in your life and you will do like 160 for life. You completely wake up and realize something that you are able to take completely new and fresh direction for life. It only takes one day. And then you are in the progress of reborn and changing yourself towards something that you now see as more valuable than before. It takes only one day. And in that sense, I don't ever want to look down upon anyone or underestimate anyone, since I know so well that miracles happen. Anyone can make a miracle happen. You know, if you think of dominoes, and the biggest domino that you ever can imagine. It can be turned down by a small domino as an ant. This small can make the progress all the way to the biggest domino what you ever imagine. So make it valuable, make it precious. You live only once this life.